Rich, welcome, how are we?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all, no problem at all. So, as founder and CEO, what is Gigged?
Gigged.AI. So, in its purest form, it's a talent marketplace. It's actually two talent marketplaces. So, we've got two products, but really what we do is we work with chief information officers and chief technology officers at pretty large companies. I say kind of mid-sized to large enterprise. And we help them fill digital skill gaps. So with skill shortages, most CIOs and CTOs have got huge skill shortages, mainly because of AI-related data analysts, data scientists. So we didn't want to build a recruitment company. I'd done that before. And we wanted to see whether we could use technology to do that. So yeah, there's two marketplace products. One is an internal talent marketplace, so we like Ron Seal, right? So we just make sure they're named like what they do. So the internal talent marketplace is a software, it's a SaaS product. It's a white label SaaS, and like it says in the tin, it takes your internal employees and it gives you skill visibility, skill matching, and skill analytics straight out of the box. So if you're a CIO, you've got 500 people in your team, then gives you ability to know what you've got. So if you're looking for a data analyst or you're looking for somebody with a specific skill set, you can then quickly see if you've got anybody on the park that can do that. Then flip into the other product, which is an open talent marketplace. The way you think about it's like an Upwork or a Fiverr, but for digital transformation. So it's only focusing on high-level skill sets. And it matches to a pre-built, pre-vetted pool of 25,000 talent users. They're consultants, side hustlers, freelancers, contractors, and they can do that in an outcome or a time and material. So there's a lot going on, right? It's a simple concept with a lot of complexity in it. So, but yeah, in its purest form, two products that fill digital skill gaps.
I guess the big thing is enterprises are complicated.
Yep.
They're very, very complicated.
Yep.
And when you've not worked for one of these large enterprises and you think, we'll just hire somebody.
Yeah.
It's not that simple for them.
No.
You know what I mean? There's so much vetting hoops that they need to jump through. But interestingly, what you're saying, some of these enterprises, in terms of like their technology divisions, there's thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
And there probably is a mix of unused talent just sitting, going to the waste. Then they're going out to the consultancy market, or they're bringing in an extra company to do it and having to onboard them. So I guess you're trying to make better use of the resource that's already there.
Yeah. So, a lot of those consultancy users are probably our biggest customer base is technology consultancies right now, who have got associates, they've got benches, they're not utilised very well, and then they need external talent. So we do both, but yeah, absolutely. And a lot of time, people leave jobs. People always think it's the number one reason is money, but it's not. That's number two. Number one is they're not improving their skills. They're not going anywhere. So if you're able to give somebody a gig, hence the name, on a project, say you're doing a Gen AI use case, and you've got somebody who's done loads of certifications in generative AI, but they've never actually been able to commercially use that. Well, there's a project internally. Why couldn't they work 10%, 20% of their time on that project?
Yeah.
Upskill, retain, and maybe make you save a hire. So it makes sense. And yeah, we're trying to simplify. The key thing for us is kind of keep it simple and speed. That's the two things that we focus on.
Are some enterprises actually looking to pay their own staff additional money for that gig?
I'm not seen that yet.
No.
There's an interesting concept which is down the line. I think one of the things was we quit our jobs in 2021 and launched this, and we're probably a little bit early, right? So we had 2 years building product, iterating, testing like what's our ideal customer profile, what's the messaging, and we've got all of that nailed now, but it did take longer than I'd thought. And I think that's because the market wasn't quite there. I think where the market could go, and something that we've talked to some customers about, is that you could actually start to you could start to share your resource, right? When you know what you've got, could you charge them out to another company, for example? But yeah, we've not seen anybody paying internal yet. But I think that that's where it goes. I think big companies, I'm
even
sure we'll talk
centers,
about it.
Isn't it? Like cost centers between
Absolutely.
different companies.
Absolutely, we've seen that. We've seen cost centers in between. So we've definitely seen internal resources being charged to a project. We've seen that a lot. That's not benefiting the individual financially, but we've seen the cost centers being shared. But what I think is going to happen within technology enterprise, because I spent 3 years at Gartner, so I spent a lot of time working with CIOs every day. And I was seeing it then, but it's now happening even more, is that they've got a lot of hiring freezes, they've got a lot of cost pressures, and the biggest cost is usually people. So they're reducing that permanent headcount, but they've got more work than ever to do. So how are they going to do that? They're going to use external resource, they're going to try and use more consultancies, and we're seeing all the consultancies pretty much create more revenue. We're seeing nearly every recruitment company's revenues back by like 10%. It's because they're not moving quick enough to deal with the lack of permanent demand. And then we'll see more companies trying to tap into internal resource as well. So I think it's going to be a triumvirate of internal, external, contingent talent, and then obviously agents as well.
So when you were coming on, doing a wee bit of Googling, as you do, and the size of the gig economy is staggering.
Huge.
It's absolutely staggering.
Depends who you listen to, but it's trillions.
So it was 1.6 billion people. Main source of income globally is from the gig economy.
Yep.
Now that's across everything, not just technology. But by 2028, they're saying the technology gig economy alone will be worth $1 trillion.
Yep.
It's staggering. It's already leading the way in India, China, Brazil, with these type of economies. Now, then I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and it was saying that there are certain people thinking that the new way of working, that both benefits companies and individuals, is a gig economy. So rather than me having one job, I go there 9 to 5, I pick my gigs, and I work the hours I want to work.
Yep.
Is that the nirvana for you?
I think that's where it will go, right? I think, we got a lot of grief for calling ourselves gigged and focusing the gig economy initially. We got a lot of grief on it. Because the gig economy has a...
cash in hand.
Well, it's got a bad name, right? If you think about like Uber, there was a lot of challenges with people with that, obviously Deliveroo. But it's very, very different gig economy, right? So the tech gig economy is so different than that sort of gig economy. In that gig economy, a lot of those people want to be full-time workers, and you shouldn't stop them being full-time workers. But in the technology sector, most of the people who are doing gigs and doing consulting, they don't want to be a full-time worker. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be forced to be a full-time worker. So, that's what we're definitely seeing, and I do think that's where it will go. You'll see more people in their 50s move from full-time work. They've worked at Big Four, they've worked at consultancy, and they've now got 3-4 gigs, maybe a couple of startups, a couple of enterprises, and they're doing fractional or gig work, similar thing. And that's where we'll see it going. It's not for everybody, but if you think about, you've got those 50 plus that are doing that, and then you've got Gen Z coming in, and it's like more than 60% of Gen Zs take a freelance job now than they do a perm job after uni. They don't go into perm straight away anymore, partially because there's not that many perm. I've been growing about this for a while. Perm is reducing. Those graduate jobs, those permanent full-time jobs, they are reducing. It's the biggest headcount. Government only helping it with increasing national insurance. I think we're going to see the gig economy grow, and I don't think there should be negative connotations with the gig economy. I think it can be a positive, for sure.
I guess people can work how they want to work, where they want to work. I guess one of the concerns is it really benefits areas that have cheaper resource.
Yep.
So India, China, so you're going to have somebody sitting in a house in Bearsden trying to compete financially against somebody from a faraway field.
Yep.
I guess that's something we'll all have to navigate.
Yeah. I think my thoughts on that, I don't think that's a new thing, right? I think that's always been there. I think we've seen outsourcing to other areas for the last 30 years, and that's always been a thing. I think what we need to do, if let's say you're a data scientist in Bearsden, is that you're just to be thinking about, right, how do I compete? The reality is you're probably not competing. The reality is, if you're looking to work with particular enterprises and particular workers, they're going to look at different skills, but you're probably not competing. But you do need to make it as easy as possible for a company to engage. You need to try and get to value as quickly as possible. So, we're not seeing that having a cost impact, because I said a lot of, if you're doing a high a high level, if you're bringing in a high level person to do a project, you do usually want to see them, not because you want to check on them, but they need to come to a steering group meeting or a board meeting or something like that. So they usually are kind of based locally or near shore. So I think when you're outsourcing to other locations, but I think what Brazil, you mentioned, India and Pakistan, look, they've been brilliant with Upwork's revenue keeps growing because of those regions, and those regions have great resource. So, you definitely want to be aware of it, but
there's different levels of skills, but there's like a technology commodity skill. So if you want somebody to run Google Ads for you, you're paying somebody for their knowledge. But if you're wanting someone who's able to communicate with senior data scientists to drive a project forward, that's about culture, it's about experience, it's about, do they have enough mud on their boots in terms of the experience to go through. So I guess it's important for people to make sure they're not in a skill set that's a race to the bottom. Can it be commoditized? Can it be made as cheap as humanly possible?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment, is that roles are being commoditized. So, we started the company nearly 4 years ago, not quite, but nearly. And initially, we seen tons of demand for copywriters and UX design, but really copywriters. We had a lot of demand for that. Now the best copywriters are still working, and they're still required. But because of a lot of the AI tools have commoditized high level copywriting, high level design. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not as good as a human, right? And a copywriter. But if you need something quickly and it needs to just be good enough, are you going to pay somebody or are you going to just do it? And we've seen, we haven't had a copywriting gig on our platform for well over 2 years. Not one.
Incredible.
The rise in data analysis, data quality, data scientists has been huge. Software development as well. I know everybody's saying software developers are going to be commoditized. We've not seen that. But I said we've seen a huge decline in copywriting and UX and UI roles. And then we've seen a huge increase in those data roles, and I think we'll just that trend will continue. I think it will probably reverse as well. I think really good copywriters are going to come back in demand. Because we were looking at a project the other day internally, and we were like, yeah, it's okay, but it's like we really want a human who understands what we're doing and can use some of the copywriting to help and take the data and take all the data and extrapolate it, but there is that creativity that you need. But yeah, we're seeing that change all the time, and we're seeing companies change how they hire.
Yeah, certainly from a marketing perspective, you're now seeing LinkedIn is just full of ChatGPT generated insights.
Oh, they're awful.
And look, everyone does it.
Yeah.
You can get something out, it's succinct and all the way, but I actually think that there's going to be a more pivot to more organic type of natural content that isn't AI created, and that's going to get harder and harder to tell what that is.
So I'd done this the other day. So our biggest channel of growing a business is LinkedIn. It always has been. Personal LinkedIn company account does okay, but really a lot of our leads come from myself, my co-founder. And we spent a lot of time on that. And I had a post the other day. It was one of those posts I never thought anything of. It was about how large recruitment companies, not all recruitment companies, but large recruitment companies are being slowly disrupted. Not fast, but slowly disrupted. You're seeing consultancies revenue increasing. You're seeing talent platforms like ourselves increasing. And you're seeing a slow reduction in pretty much the top 10 recruitment companies have all lost 10% revenue year on year. So you're seeing that. And I wrote a post about it. I never thought anything of it. I didn't give it too much thought. I never used ChatGPT, I just wrote it. And it was my best performing post. It got like 30,000 impressions in the first day. It was my best performing post that month. And I never thought anything of it. So I then asked ChatGPT, what made this post good? And it told me. And then I asked it to recreate a similar one, which I put out 2 days ago. And it got like 1,000 impressions.
Yeah, fraction.
Aye, so it told me what I'd done well, so I was able to think, because I wasn't even thinking about it. Said, you've done this well. I never thought about any of that. I just wrote it. So, but I think there's something in that, right? I think natural speech, natural language, something that is even got a mistake in it. I had a spell mistake in it, didn't notice it. But these things just make it a bit more real. And it was just interesting to see the exactly the same style of post, totally different result. So
I think there's two things that are driving that. One, there's a great kind of meme video from LinkedIn about people kidding on they're in the pub and communicating the same way that you do on LinkedIn. I mean, it's that cringeworthy. Like, I celebrate this pint. And
I've seen that. They made me rethink some of my comments.
Absolutely, and that's not how we're meant to interact with each other, and no one's interested. And see, in reality, no one's interested in the corporate bullshit that goes out. We are excited to announce that we've got a new shiny thing. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? People on LinkedIn to either learn, to build their own profile, to get a job, or to have a nosy. That's kind of the main points of that platform. So it's not surprising that kind of organic stuff does well. I find that the same. You put a lot of effort. Graphic designers doing fancy images and all the rest of it. This thing doesn't go anywhere. You do something on your phone before you go to sleep and wake up, and it's done really well. But I think there's two things to that. I think it's what humans want to interact with, but I also think the platform is actually demoting.
The algorithm, definitely. It tags the images now. If you use an image through ChatGPT, it does tag it, or use whatever. But it does tag it, and I think the link, whatever way its speech is looking for, the algorithm is looking for it. I agree with that. I've never proved it, but I think that's a fact.
100%. I've done some testing with it as well. But on LinkedIn, or ChatGPT has a very, very particular writing style when you start to looking at it. Like the most giveaway is the dash. The long dash.
Long dash.
What's that? Emojis in funny places.
Yeah.
The way it structures sentences. So I definitely think the algorithm is looking for this, because what they are trying to protect against is bots posting on their platform all day, and no humans.
Yeah. The biggest my frustration with it is around the comments, around the bots
comments
that are AI generated comments, because they're all the same. Like, that's a very good insight on this. And what do you think of it? And you're like, that's not a real person.
It's an arms race, isn't it? It's an absolute arms race. Because there was a while on LinkedIn that they seemed to have fixed it in terms of you were getting spammed on message.
Yeah.
Now you're getting hundreds of automated messages a day, so obviously they've done something.
Yeah, it's like a junk. I only noticed it the other day, and I noticed I had millions of messages in it. So there's a junk spam or something.
There's a junk, so hopefully they'll do that to the content. But I think human content's going to rise to the top. But I guess going back to your copywriter point, there's a real impatience now. So do you go through the process of hiring your copywriter, onboarding them, bringing them up to speed, or do you spend 15 minutes and probably get something that's 60% as good as a copywriter could do for most organisations? And that's the reality of the situation.
And I think that impatience comes out of there is more pressure on digital leaders or tech leaders to deliver than ever. There always has been, right? It's always been a tough job, but even more than ever. Like, worked in digital transformations for 20 years. My first digital transformation was pretty much delivering laptops to RBS and with Dell, and I was pretty much a project coordinator, just delivering laptops and plugging them in and making sure people were in the right place at the right time. There's a lot of pressure on that, but it was kind of like, it was manageable pressure because it was, hardware, software was basic, but now the pressure to deliver, and companies, again, I worked at Gartner, McKinsey, they do a really good job at influencing the C-level, and they want that Gen AI feature now. They want, so they can update the board, so it increases the board price. There's a lot of pressure coming down, and so how do you do that? You've got to deliver quick, and you've got to be able to show something quick. The years of doing a 3-4 year transformation program and then showing at the end how it's worked, you don't have that anymore. You've got to show something now. And I think that's why there's that urgency. And as I said, that's why what we lean into, we mentioned at the start with enterprises, we try and simplify it, make it easy for them to buy either of our products, so they can onboard us through procurement, get finance set up. Like, we've done a lot of work, and a lot of, probably 80% of the work I've done in the past hasn't been product. Craig, my co-founder, and his team have done a great job building a product. I've not gotten that much involved in the product. What I've made it really simple is, how do they buy it? And how do they get through? How do I make sure that they don't need to jump through a million hoops? How do I make sure the master service agreement's good? How do I make sure that we get set up in finance? How do I make sure there's an API connection to that? Just making it really easy for them to buy, so they can then get a skill, either internally or externally, super quick. That's the name of the game. That speed, that urgency is, and I don't think that's going to change. I think that's only going to, and that's what, that we're trying to fight against. The old models that you mentioned, take time. If you're trying to hire a contractor through an old recruitment PSL, it's still taking you 8 weeks. What's the point?
Yeah, one of my friends, he actually down south, he places a lot of contractors, technology contractors, very traditional, but with a very specific skill set.
Yep.
So, sound like Liam Neeson here, but all the stuff that you spoke about, it sounds simple, but I've had conversations with him where he's not been paid in 3 months.
Yeah.
Because someone in a project somewhere didn't pass on a form to pay something down to go from it. Now he's still having to pay his talent.
Yeah, you still need to pay them.
Or the go, or the walk.
Yeah.
For the doing. So you can see the massive benefits of having a platform that already takes care of that for the talent pool. They don't need to worry about, all right, I need to phone the person. You can't push too hard because you might not get more work. It's a real balancing act.
Yeah, and a lot of it is really old school. I said we've automated it, so every time that milestone has been completed by that person, they automatically, the hiring manager gets a ping saying, hey, are you happy with this deliverable? Yes, and then the payment is made straight away, or no, and then we'll be like, all right, why? Usually it's a simple issue, and then we can fix that. Or if it's just a day rate, then they get an automatic timesheet every Friday, gets filled in, and then they get paid, after that, usually a week or two after that. So, but automating much of that process is been critical. Because again, going back to traditionally when I worked in recruitment, we had huge back office teams, like hundreds of people in back office. I don't think you need as many as that. Now you can automate a lot of it, and if you build native, like we're lucky, we built native.
Yeah, you don't have the legacy to deal with.
No, what we've got now is pretty much what we were going to build. Few iterations along the way, sure. A few pivots, but not really. I wouldn't say we've pivoted the overall vision and the overall product. There's been lots of probably many pivots and many changes, but we've not fundamentally. The business plan is nearly identical to what it was when I probably wrote it 6 years ago. Now, back in a 5-packet in my notes in my phone, and then kind of built on it, let it grow.
So that's I always love to ask, because all businesses start the same way. They all start with a flash of an idea in someone's head at some point, and that idea might take a decade to come to fruition, or somebody might get up the next day and start a company. So where did that flash of the idea come from?
So I always thought I would, I always had that kind of entrepreneurial, I hate the word entrepreneur, but I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial bone in my body. Mm-hmm. Just even stupid things, I grew up in South Lanarkshire, and we'd do lots, we would do, like, we'd get phone books delivered and we'd deliver them. We'd go and sell milk and bacon to, I don't think you get away with any of this now.
No.
But we used to, and we'd done these things, and then I went to Bell College in Hamilton. I wasn't a great student. I'd done all right there. I was working with a startup at the time, just in Motherwell. Actually, it was a tech startup that sold software to car companies. And I kind of learned from the entrepreneur there, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then I ended up getting a job selling cars to the military in Germany when I was 21. And but that was very entrepreneurial. So you had your own business. You were self-employed. Didn't know any of this, right? You were self-employed. If you didn't make a sale, you didn't get paid. You had to manage your tax, which I'd done an awful job of. I owed the German government a lot of money. But that helped. And then, I met a guy in a pub who said, you'd be great in recruitment. Didn't know what recruitment was. And I joined a company called Allegis Group, which was an $11 billion company at the time, now probably 16, 17 billion. And I spent 12 years there, but it was very entrepreneurial, right? It was still is by two cousins who'd started in the 80s, and they built, it's more than a recruitment company, it's a tech consultancy, it's an outsourced, it's just a huge company, and a really good company. So I spent 12 years there, and I never ever really had the itch to go and start my own company, because I was starting my own business lines, I was starting my own offices, so I felt that itch. I was kind of an entrepreneur, but I never felt, and the itch didn't really feel, because if I wanted to do something, if I could make a business case, they'd let me do it, and even when I was in my early 20s, they'd let me do it. But the idea came, we were in a conference in Orlando, and we were talking about it was a SWOT analysis with all the top leaders in the world. We're in Orlando, and we looked at the threats, and the threat was the gig economy. And I didn't really know what the gig economy was. I really didn't, and I was kind of ashamed to admit it. I really didn't know anything about what was going on and what disruption was happening. And then I started learning about Upwork and Fiverr, and I started learning about this space, and I'm like, maybe there could be a micro work platform. You know, I'd worked in digital transformations, and the key thing in digital transformations was always the pain in the backside was creating a statement of work. Like creating a document was the pain. Like, how hard can it be? And then matching a talent to that document to do the things in that document. So I thought, could we create a micro work platform called, and it was called Talent Exchange at the time. And PwC sent us a cease and desist, hence the reason we changed the name to Gigged.AI. But anyway, I had that idea. I didn't then just go and create the business, but I had that idea, and that's where I thought, there's something here. So I then, at the time I was suffering, and I ended up suffering from really bad burnout, and I decided to take some time out, and you know, it was a big wrench, but I decided I had to leave a leaders group at the time. I had to just go and take some time. I was 33. I did a really successful 12 years, but I was a wreck physically, mentally, and it was only my fault. There was nobody's fault but my own. But I didn't know about burnout. I didn't know about mental health. I didn't know about any of that stuff, and I worked like a maniac, and I enjoyed working like a maniac. But the older I got, and you know, my daughter came along, and I started taking on more responsibilities and taking more on offices, and I just say yes to everything because I wanted to continue to perform at a high level. But it came so I took some time out, and I spent some time in Japan, and I learned about Ikigai, which was about purpose. It's a long answer, but and I learned, and the purpose was all about like something that you enjoy, something that you can get paid for, and you know, I'd been in the recruitment industry, and I was trying to get away from the recruitment industry, and they were like, your purpose is to be a meaningful connector of people. It's just a fancy word for a recruiter, right? So I was like, right, okay. So anyway, I started building on that idea, but I wasn't ready to build a company. I'd kind of wrote down a plan, I'd wrote a lot of things, and then a couple of things happened. I was asked to join the board of the data lab from my friend Gillian Docherty, and so I started learning more about AI and data. I knew a little bit, but I learned a lot more about it. I met John Brodie, who became our chair and became a big fan of ours, huge supporter of ours. And then I got offered a job at Gartner, and I spent 3 years at Gartner, and I really learned so much at Gartner about what the impact CIOs were actually having. I learned a lot about the future of work. I learned a lot about what platforms that they thought were coming, and that was just amazing, right? So that's when I had to, you know, that's where I built on the idea. And me and Craig, my co-founder, you know, we go way back. I grew up in Lanark, he grew up in Biggar, right? So we've got a South Lanarkshire connection, and we both grew up in little towns. We both get into technology. We were both successful in our own right, and then we kind of got together and started talking during lockdown, just about an idea. And then that's where we decided, right, could we build, you know, he was a contractor for like 12 years at the big banks, and he hated hiring contractors himself, and he hated working with the companies, he hated like going through all these big companies, and he's getting paid was a nightmare. It was a pain. All he wanted to do was go and build software and build technology. He didn't want to deal with finding a contract, he didn't want to deal with payments, he didn't want to deal with IR, he didn't want to deal with any of that. So I thought, how can we automate a lot of this? And how can we automate the creation? So the statement of work creation, how can we automate the matching? And how can we do that? And so we got together and we started building a plan with John Brodie, who became our chairman and our first investor. And then, you know, and we thought, right, you only get one chance to do it. So, you know, I said in July 2021 or in June 2021, we quit our jobs. We resigned. We got a tiny office in Glasgow, and we started building it. But it all came from all of these scenarios around, we'd worked in digital transformations, we'd had burnout, we'd had anxiety, we'd had people ourselves off with those issues. We seen there was a better way, and that technology could enable it. I said, we're not about automating everything. We still need good humans to make sure things can happen. For sure, we're not a 100% automated platform, but we believe that a lot of the pain can be automated, and that's what we've been building, and that's what it came from, and we believe passionately that that's how things are going to be. And
how long did it take you to get to your first paying customer, your first revenue?
You know what? It didn't take that long, but it was a lot of what we kind of done initially was probably the wrong customer. So we focused initially just on building supply. So I think, if you're building a marketplace, it's all about supply and demand. And whether it's either the internal or the open talent marketplace, you've got to start with supply. Not everybody would agree with that, and that's okay, but you need to pick one. And we picked supply. So we spent the first 12 months just building a supply of data talent initially. And then our first gig came by accident. It was, client came on, signed up, posted a gig and hired a gig over the weekend. It was on a Sunday, and me and Craig were over the moon. And then we started going after that.
Through a credit card type payment?
It was a Stripe payment.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Stripe payment that we had. We'd set that up, and it was a Stripe escrow payment that we'd set up, and it was pretty cool. And we went down this kind of SMB route, and startups go on, but we did realise, after we'd done our seed round, if we're really going to grow, because pre-seed we were just experimenting. And we were lucky. We were able to raise from some really good funds and get a lot of support from Scottish Enterprise and Innovate UK. And we've been able to get a lot of support. But we realised that if we're going to grow a business, and then that's where the business model changed. So you can't sign up and create a gig anymore. You need to be onboarded. That customer needs to be onboarded and verified. The talent needs to be onboarded and verified. There needs to be high quality at both sides. It can't just be a massive marketplace.
They already exist, don't they?
They exist. Yeah. And we realise that's not really where our strength lies, right? I've spent all my career in enterprise. Why am I working in an industry I don't know? So that's where we decided. And that was painful because you had to rebuild, you had to replatform. You have to then, your security's got to change. Everyone's got to change. Messaging's got to change. Everything's got to change. So that was tough.
How long was that pivot? How long in your life cycle were you when you decided?
We were quite late on, so we made that. So we launched. We quit our jobs in the summer of 2021. We done a pre-seed not long after that, and we done our seed in late December 2022. Or in fact, December 2022. 23, we were starting to re-platform anyway. We were growing our customer base, but the revenue really wasn't moving the needle enough. There was a lot of volume, a lot of clients, like 300 clients. We've got 15 clients now, right? So we went from having 300 to 15, and revenue increasing so much more.
Yeah.
But we made the decision in December 2023 to fully pivot, and that was a hard decision. And it was a decision that, I went to the board and I talked to our team, and I don't think everybody agreed with it because it was a big, what I call it, I said, if you're going to have a big outcome, you've got to make big, bold moves, and you've got to pull big levers. There's no incremental change won't work. So we had to make that big decision. So we had to slowly but surely start to pivot away from our existing client base. And then you've got a lot of hangover there because not everybody in your team's then aligned to that strategy. Your marketing, your brand, your product is not aligned to that strategy. It's still aligned to the old one. So it took a lot of work and it was a lot of pain. And so the first 6 months of 2024 were absolutely brutal. And I questioned myself a lot, and I think a lot of people, rightly so, were questioning us, going, was that silly? Because it was early. We'd always planned to be an enterprise company, but not in 2024. So we managed to, so we had pain, and then pretty much in the 6 months, we kind of won our first. We had one enterprise customer already. That's what made the decision. Then we done another one, and we done another one. And I said, I wouldn't say, we're definitely not in perfection, and we're definitely, I still think we're behind where we should be overall. Absolutely. I think I still would like to be further ahead of the game where we are now. But what we do have now is the foundation, the product built, product use, and actually use cases from our ideal customer profile, CIOs and CTOs in those companies actually saying good things about us, and that's worth its weight in gold. You know, we've got that case study when somebody, or who you're working with, we can show them some really good logos now. Some of those logos aren't doing that much revenue, but they're doing revenue. And we're a land and expand model, right? We're not one of those SaaS that will go in, sell a 6-figure SaaS and then go away. I think that's a hard sale at the moment. So we're a land and expand model. We'll go in with whatever platform they want to use. We'll start there. And then with time, we'll try and cross-sell the other product. But, you know, we won't do that at speed. We will go in and try and do a good job, try and add value, show them that this works. We've 100% customer retention. We've not lost one customer yet.
That's
so
key.
Yeah, we've not lost one yet. We need to grow more quickly. As I said, I'm unbelievably impatient, and I would like to double that customer base as quickly as we can, but it takes time.
Is one of the challenges that maybe a budget line doesn't exist for what you're selling? I've came across that before, trying to sell something that's of immense value, but actually is that new, that it doesn't have a place within an enterprise budget stack?
Not now. I think we did have that issue, but I think we've aligned it well. So we've aligned either product stack to they're not the same budget, right? So what we realised was you can't treat them the same. So the internal talent marketplace product usually comes out of the kind of HR tech budget, the SaaS HR tech budget, where your workdays are, your eightfolds are, and that budget is usually held by the CIO, but a lot of decision making is within HR. So we found that we were able to navigate that pretty well, but that is very much a SaaS budget.
Are enterprise spending significant money on Upwork?
So on Workday, yes.
Oh, Workday, sorry.
Absolutely. There's significant money on a lot of these platforms. And we're not trying to compete with them. You know, I think that would be silly for us to try and compete with multi-billion-dollar companies, but we are a tactical solution that can be used to help. You know, we've got really simple UX. You know, we can be deployed really quickly. So it's not going to replace a Workday, but it will solve a problem. In terms of the open talent marketplace, yeah, that was a challenge because there isn't really a category for talent platforms like your Upworks and your Fiverr. A lot of them are discretionary spend. A lot of enterprises aren't really using those models. So you get two budgets. You get the recruitment budget, which is the RPO or MSP, low margin, high volume. We don't want to play in that space. And then you get a consultancy budget. That's where we play. So as a platform, we go after that, what we call services spend, where your Accentures and your Capgeminis are. We're not competing with them either, right? Because it'd be silly to try and compete with these huge companies. But again, it's a tactical point solution. Can we be able to? But yeah, so we're going after that consultant budget. So two products with very different legal agreements, very different procurement, and very different budgets. But we know that now. So again, and that's been a lot of the journey. We didn't know that straight away. Our legals our contracts were too convoluted. They were too difficult. Par equity helped me with simplifying them. They were just too difficult, and we realised that we need to make it easy, and that's the key thing for me. You need to make it easy for that enterprise. You can't create barriers to entry. You need to make it easy for them to buy from you. You need to do as much of the legwork as you can.
Clearly, you're seeing there's a lot of disruption in the recruitment industry, which you're now perversely part of in a different way. How do you think AI is going to impact your business as an outcome of what it's doing to recruitment?
So we've looked. Our big thing was how do we bring in AI from an early stage. So we built our own conversational models early. Obviously, when OpenAI got their API as good as it was, you don't need to build your own conversational AI anymore. So we work with Microsoft and OpenAI to bring a lot of their technology into our suite, so to automate a lot of the creation of that statement of work and the matching and everything else. So we've seen a lot of that, and we've been at the forefront of that. I think the big thing for us that we need to be aware of is the rise in AI agents. I think right now they're the worst they're ever going to be. They're only going to get better. There's not that many use cases of them actually being that great and replacing people, but they will. And we need to be aware of that, and we need to have a solution. So we've been working on that for a while. Very different to what our competitors are doing, rightly or wrongly, but we are working on that. So I think you really need to be aware of how can you use agentic AI in your internal workflows. So we've actually not grown our headcount at all over the last 12 months. It's actually went back a little bit because we realised that we've been able to automate a lot of our processes. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them that we have through our own agents that we've built internally. But what we've realised is we don't want to sell them though. We don't want to become an agent seller. So our hypothesis is that large companies are going to have thousands upon thousands of agents from various sources, but probably mostly from Salesforce, OpenAI, and ServiceNow and Microsoft. So we're working on how can we work on the bring your own agent concept that they can actually be matched to that. So yeah, I think if you're not looking at how agents are going to impact our industry, and when I say that, I mean platforms. Any industry, then we need to be aware of that. And you need to be ready and you need to be working on it now. And if you're not working on it now, it's too late.
Yeah. we are heavily involved with the deployment of large-scale AI systems. And I actually think the thing that's holding agentic AI back is not the agentic AI, it's the data.
Yeah.
And that probably then plays into what you're saying about companies hiring every data scientist they can get their hands on.
Yeah.
Companies' data has grown organically over decades. It's in all different pools. There's duplication. There's no commonality between it. It's outdated. There's silos. There's security issues.
Yeah.
But what we're now able to do with AI, especially when you start to look at things like knowledge graphing and pre-processing, that actual data can then become very, very valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that once we get the data fixed, the agentic AI bit will then really march on. Yeah.
I think we've seen some of the gigs we're seeing a lot for large companies who have got quite an underspend in IT, right? So that's a big area for us, is companies that have huge revenue, but they've actually got very small IT teams. And they're obviously getting pushed from the CEO to do agentic AI, but the big gig that we're seeing posted a lot and being hired a lot is a data strategy. They don't have a data strategy. So they need to get a data strategy in place first before you're then going to go and build build an agent. You need to have a data strategy first. That can be done quickly. All these things can be done quick, but you need to have a data strategy, and then you can start to build on top of that.
Your platform's really providing a lot of insights, isn't it? At the kind of heartbeat of how the industry's changing.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really valuable, that, in terms of you can see the change before it's happening.
Yeah. And we've kind of, you're kind of like, we've always been about like, we can kind of see it coming. So we're kind of always like right now we're really excited
about.
You
not monetize that?
I think
yes and no.
Yes and no. I think we've been very conscious to keep how we make money simple. There's probably another 5 or 6 revenue streams you could create from what we do. We've made the decision not to do that. We've made the decision that we will monetize the usage, either on a subscription or a usage base. We're not going to monetize the data, because the skill data, the internal, that's not our data. We don't own that. And we don't want to own it. We want the customer own that. So we haven't, and I don't think we will. We've been pushed a lot and asked a lot about it, but yeah, for us, we're just going to keep that nice and simple, and focus on what we do well.
It takes a lot of guts to do that as a founder, because it's hard not, certainly from my experience, especially in the early days, it's hard not to chase money regardless of where it is, if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So
having that clarity of mind to actually say, because the right thing is to become the best at what you do.
Yeah, and like, sometimes I've questioned it, but we have, we could have become a recruitment company, right? We could have become a consultancy, and we could have just left the platform and focused on building that. But we were, myself and Craig were totally focused that this company scales through the platform, either platform being at the heart of what it is. And that has came at a detriment to growth and revenue at times, and it's made that tougher. But I do believe that will actually be our strength, because
you can grow higher if you've got good foundations.
Yeah, and now we've got that ideal customer profile. We know who we're selling to. We know what a good customer looks like. We can say no to a lot of stuff, right? So we say now more. We now are doing more because we're doing less. Like we said no initially. Me and Craig would do anything, any customer, any opportunity. But now we just say no to a lot of stuff. We say no to more than we say yes to. Especially with the internal talent marketplace, because everyone you could use that for something. You know, people have asked us, you could use it for a dating app. Yeah, we could. We're not gonna. No, you could use it for for various other use cases. Investment ops and stuff like that. You could use it for lots of things, but that's not what we do. We work with CIOs and CTOs of those companies to help them with their skills journey, whether it's with internal or external talent. That's it, and that's what we're going to double down on, and we're going to focus on that, and not muddy the messaging or muddy our offering, and just keep it. I probably said simple a million times, right? I said that is our number one core value as a company is keep it simple, and we will continue just to try and keep everything we do as simple as we can.
Fantastic advice, and anyone who might be watching this who's starting off in a company or as a founder themselves, I think the bravery to keep it simple is really, really key. And it's not a hard thing. It's a very, very hard thing to do sometimes when you're staring at builds coming in, or there's doubt, and you're saying no, this is who we are and what we do, and sticking to that path. So good advice.
Yeah, it's like I said,
it can be wrong.
It could be wrong, and as I said, I'm very conscious that some of my decisions have been wrong, and this could be the wrong strategy.
Doesn't appear to be.
But I'm committed to it, and I believe it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to keep us on that path, and I think this an effective leader's the one that creates a plan and goes with it, and I'll die on my sword. And if a company doesn't succeed, then it's on me, and I'll take that, and that's that would be what it'd be. But I need to do what and not try and be all things to all men, and that's what we were, and that's I said we have gone down this route before, right? We definitely initially we were trying to build in 2021, 22. We were trying to build the most convoluted ecosystem ever. We were trying to build something that we thought could be a $1 billion idea, and it probably could, but it was too confusing. The technology was too much, the commercial model, it was just too confusing. And it could have been something, but we had to step back and go, what are we good at? And what me and Craig decided was that we're really good at building marketplaces. That's what we're really good at doing. If we think about us as a company and what we've learned, we build a bloody good marketplace. We're really good at matching demand and supply, and I would say our marketplace is up there with any marketplace in the world right now, and we're really good at that. So let's double down on that. And that's what we've decided to do. Yeah, we're in a niche. People always say, well, why don't you work with, you could be a lawyer marketplace, you could be a sales market, we could be any marketplace. But I spent my whole career in digital transformation, so did Craig, but that's what we know. So we have made the decision, let's stick to a niche, let's stick to what we know. In the future, absolutely, can we expand that? But that'll be somebody else's job. That ain't my job. My job is to focus on the plan and deliver the plan, and then we can focus, I said, whether we are acquired or whether we merge or whatever we do. I said, I won't be the guy to do that, right? I'm a builder. I'm not the person to run a huge company. So, but right now it's about building, sticking to that plan.
So I'm always interested when you have multiple founders, because it can be a massive benefit and it can also be a living nightmare. It sounds like you guys have done okay. So if there's two people sitting in their kitchen just now discussing going into business with a pal as a founder, what advice would you give them before they start?
So you need a mediator, or you need someone in between.
You need that quorum, don't you? You
need somebody in between. Now, we were so lucky, like I mentioned before, like I met John Brody in the data lab. John had just sold his company. He'd actually asked me to go and join his new company, and I pitched him. Well, I didn't even pitch him, I just told him what I was going to do after Gartner. Because my plan always was to be at Gartner 2 or 3 years and then try and do this. That was always my plan. And I told him, and he said, that's a great idea. So anyway, he got involved with me and Craig, and he focused on, what's our strengths and weaknesses. It's a guy called Mike Pegg's kind of framework. And he worked with us. And we sat in, my wife and her sister run a tea room. We sat in that tea room a few times, and we just sat and what's my strengths? What do I want to do? And I was very clear. I want to be the front man. I want to be out there banging the drum. I want to be building a strategy, building a plan. I don't want to be deep in tech. I don't want to be deep in operations. I don't really want to be deep in the day-to-day of the business. I want to be out building it, talking to customers, testing what works. That's what I want to be doing, and that's what I'm good at. And Craig's a great builder, and so having somebody there to be able to get the strengths and the weaknesses, because what happens in a lot is that you get this, you get different conflicts, and as it grows, people want different. We have never changed what our roles are, and what I own and what he owns, and we have ideas and opinions, but he runs product. As I said, I have very little input. I will give an idea and they will ask me, but I'm not getting involved massively in that. Craig's not getting involved massively in creating the sales strategy or the plan. He'll have input, but I think having someone like a John to be able to make sure the strengths and weaknesses are right and the motivations are right. And we always had this 5-year plan to build and sell. Whether that happens is, it might or might not happen, but that was the plan, and we always had this end in mind. So I think you've got to be clear about, start with the end in mind, and you've got to be able to be very clear in the strengths and weaknesses of each person, and then who's going to take what. Because when you first start a company, sales, finance, customer success, product, engineering, those things all need to be thought about. Maybe not massively, but they need to be thought. Marketing, they all need to be thought about. So we just decided who's going to own what, and we took like 3 each, and we owned that. And we've kind of, as it scaled, we brought in people to do each, and some of them report to me, some of them report to Craig, but that's how we've done it. But I think really being aligned to those strengths and weaknesses and the goal. And if the goal is not the same one and you're different, that's only going to get worse. So I think having someone to act as that kind of go-between to really then just flesh out that there's that fit and alignment. Goal alignment, I think, is so important. Like
100%.
We've had the same goal alignment. We'll do this again. We're going. I think me and Craig.
If you're a 0.5% off at the start,
then you're going to be
50% off.
Look, we'll do this again. Like me and Craig, we'll. I think for the next 20 years, hopefully we'll keep building stuff, right? And we might do that in part of a bigger company. We might do that. God knows, but we'll keep working together, building stuff. We're a really strong partnership, and I love building with them, and we'll keep doing it. We're totally bought into making this work. We've taken massive sacrifices to do this, like huge, and we feel them even more now. We lived off our savings for a while, but that's long gone. So we feel it. We feel the sacrifice. It's not an easy thing to do, but we're totally committed to making it work.
Mm-hmm. No, it's. I think the bravery to live off the savings, to see the savings dwindle, but to carry on.
Yep.
I take my hat off to you with that.
Yeah, my wife's not a big fan of
it. She will be one day, hopefully. So, a big part of what you've been doing is out raising money.
Yep.
Again, for someone sitting out there listening about thinking, I'm going to go and raise money, what's the best advice that you could give yourself if you could go back and speak to you 5-6 years ago about raising money with venture capitalists? Yeah,
look, it's very, very hard. Is what I would say. Unless you need to do it, don't do it. It's very, very hard. Now, you got to have, we had the end in mind, right? So we're trying to build and sell in 5 years. To do that, you need venture capital money. You can't. It's very difficult to do it without venture capital.
Unless you have your own, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we decided we're going to go down the venture capital path. But I think the first thing to do is you got to learn about it. So I knew nothing about venture capital, nothing about angel investing. I wish I had, because I would have made a lot of angel investments in the past, because some of them are really tax efficient. So I wish I had when I was making good money when I was younger. I really wish I'd known more about it. But I read Secrets of Sand Hill Road. I read a lot of books, and I read about it. I just read about it, listened to podcasts, I learned about it. And I learned that most companies do a friends and family round, which is usually an angel round, and that gets you off the ground. We then used that to get grant funding from Innovate
So what do you
UK.
mean by angel?
Well, an angel is a individual, usually a wealthy individual, but not always, that will invest money. In the UK, you've got EIS and SEIS, so it can be a really good tax benefit for them. So, if you're earning 40 grand a year and you put 5 grand into a company, then you're only taxing 35. It's good. It's good. So an angel is someone who's usually been successful in business. They've not always been a startup founder, not always. A lot of them are working corporate and they're in big jobs, and they invest in startups. Some do it because they love it and they like to give back and like to give advice. Some do it because they want to get a large return. Obviously, you don't always get a large return, and it's but the SEIS and EIS that the government have put in is really good tax relief. So that works pretty well. So an angel investor is a wealthy individual. A venture capital is obviously a firm that is taking the money from a limited partner, an LP, and they're investing that. Now that it's much easier to do an angel round than it is to do a venture capital round. A venture capital round is a different ball game altogether, and it takes a lot of time.
I guess the angel is the highest level of risk, isn't it? They understand it's an idea, it's a concept.
Yep.
Here's some money.
Valuation will be lower. 1 out of 10 will work. But you should start there, right? You should never go try and go to venture capital straight away. I don't think, maybe if you're in Silicon Valley, but if you're in Scotland, it is hard to raise money. It's really hard to raise money. And as I said, we've done it, but it's really, really, really hard. The hardest thing I've ever done by far.
Did you raise it in Scotland, or did you have to go further afield?
So we actually ended up raising it in Scotland. We did go further afield, but we actually got the best offers and the best people we thought to help build us was in Scotland. So our first round very early was through Techstart Ventures, which are an early stage VC, very early stage. They're a Northern Irish firm, but they've got a Scottish office, and we were lucky enough to do our pre-seed with them. They're very much focused on experimentation, iteration, and then our bigger round, our seed round, was led by Par Equity, which is one of the biggest investors in Scotland at that seed Series A stage. They had a huge success with Current Health. It was a 300 million exit. It was a big exit. So they've been in with us, and they've been a big supporter. They've obviously been pretty patient with us because we had the tough pivots and we had the tough moments, they're continuing to stay on the journey with us, and as we continue to move it forward.
What don't you like? If you've got an idea or a concept, what turns these type of investors off?
So they want to see that you validated the idea. They want to see some sort of product. I think the days of having a business plan and nothing else, you need to show them some sort of MVP. There needs to be something. With the AI tools now, you don't get an excuse not to have some form of a minimum viable product, right? You just don't. So you need to have some form of product to show them, and you need to have some sort of customer usage, not revenue. You don't need revenue. When we raised with Techstart, we didn't have any revenue. We had a product. It wasn't a great product, but it was a product nonetheless, and it worked. And it was pretty much our current product, but it was like connections. It was built on WordPress. How it worked, I don't know. I still don't know how Craig got it work, but it worked. And that was. But they want to see something, and at that stage, they're just looking at the founders. They don't care about all your advisors or your competitions you've won. What's your background? What have you done? What's your plan and what's your vision? And are you committed and got the bit between your teeth to make this work? Because when a venture capital firm invests in you, they know they're going on a journey. They know there's going to be ups and downs, right? And they know it's not going to be linear growth from here on in. There's going to be lots. Even if it is linear growth, there's still going to be issues. There'll be people problems. There'll be leadership problems. There's always going to be problems, and lots of them. So they're investing in that journey. But they need to know that at the end of the day, all said and done, who's the founders are the ones that's going to make the decisions. They're going to do in the long nights. They're going to not have any holidays. They're going to spend all their savings to make sure they do it. Are they committed? And that's what they're looking for. In the early stage investors are looking about how committed are you and how have you got experience? I think it helped us. We were in our mid-30s when we started this. We'd had successes and failures, and we had ran businesses, and we were good at what we did, and we were taking a risk. So I think that helped. That definitely helped. That we had, I had ran businesses before. I had led people. I'd hired people. I'd fired people. I'd led sales strategies. So I kind of knew what to do. Doesn't make it that much easier, but because I'd done it before, didn't. But there was that. I think they're really looking at that founder fit.
And guess in terms of how you protect yourself as well, because one of the very first guests I had on this is an old friend, a guy called Paul. He built a £10 million annual turnover company doing Cisco networking. He took VC funding, £3-4 million, can't remember exactly what it was, and within a year they put them under. So and some of the decisions that were involved in that were very brutalistic at the end in terms of how the VC viewed it and how they viewed that loss of cash. Just, well, you're one of 100, so we don't have any more time to spend with you. So what can you do to protect yourself?
You need to have a good lawyer, right? I think you need to definitely have a good lawyer, but also you need to look at the VC firm and their history. So part of the reason we went with Techstart initially and we went with Par Equity, we had other offers and we had other things we could look at. But their track history wasn't of doing that. They didn't have a huge track record of just not backing companies. They gave companies time in both. So, I think really looking at the track record was a big one. And constant communication. We've always done a monthly board meeting. We send a monthly board pack where we flag the highs and the lows.
So there's no surprises.
There's no surprises, and we're very transparent. And maybe sometimes, we might come across as negative. But at least that way, so we in our board pack, it's got highs and lows, and then every leader in our team puts a slide in that has the high points and low points, and I don't read it because I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to see it, but I'll send it to the board so they can see what each team are thinking without me, potentially sugarcoating it. So I think that communication's helped. And I think that's been key for us. Our numbers, as I said, we are really, really tough. I said 2023 and 24, revenue-wise, were the toughest years I've ever had in my career in terms of that, because we just didn't have the product market fit within our ideal customer profile. So, we're obviously, we needed that patience, and we had that patience. But I think unless we had been continually trying new things and sharing and asking for advice and saying, hey, look, we're trying this, what else do you think? Is there anything else you think we should be doing? Like really getting them involved in the decision and asking for feedback and support, introductions and anything else to say, look, we're trying to do this, but is there anything you think we shouldn't be doing? Anything you think we should be doing? I always ask that a lot in the board meetings. What else should I be doing? Just keeping that going. The other thing it's just a little thing, but it's always the little things. We do a Loom video. I do a Loom video after every board, and I send it to all of our investors. Because we've got a lot of investors, like 2 VCs, but we've got a lot of other angels and a few firms. And so I send a video, and it's a 5-minute video, and I just summarise the good and the bad, what's going on in the board. Some watch it, some don't. But that way everybody's getting updated, and everybody feels they're updated. So that helps. But I think the communication, the highs and the lows, and just not making sure that it's just the board meetings. The board meetings are a key point to be able to have that discussion. Yeah. It's a discussion. It's not that you just go in and just rhyming off of it. It should be a discussion. Trying to make it that.
And it's, I think, again, fantastic advice, because speaking back to my friend, I think one of the things he would have said that they were saying it's fine. Oh no, it's a disaster. And that could have been dealt with another way in terms of a slow decline, saying, look, we've got an issue here. I know we said we were going to win this, but we've got a hole. It's a very different conversation to have with a VC rather than going, last week it was perfect and now it's a disaster. That's a hard thing for them to deal with, probably.
Well, they're there. They want, at the end of the day, both Techstart and Par Equity want us to be successful. We want to be successful. We're on the same page. We want to be successful here. Nobody wants to wind up a business and and lose anybody's money and time. Nobody wants to do that. So, that's not what we want to But it's a business and we need to try and grow it. And if we're not doing that, we'll take advice. And if we're not on the right path, then we'll try and change that path. But I think just I said, you're in it. You're all in it together, right? You're all in it to try and grow it and not keep them at arm's length. You're all there as a team to try and grow it. Yeah, you've got different jobs. None of them are doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing what they're doing. I don't need to go and explain to investors and explain to a LP why we might have had a tough time, right? That's a tough job that they've got to do as well. So everybody's got a job to do. So I think just be mindful of that.
Yeah, no, good advice again. So you're very vocal, especially on LinkedIn, round about burnout, mental health, which I think more of us need to be, because it's kind of squirreled away. What's the difference between having a shit week and burnout?
So burnout is it's usually a slow thing. It doesn't usually, like everybody can have a bad week. Bad things can happen, and you can respond to that. Burnout is when your overall well-being, physically and mentally, is going down,
Eroding.
consistently. Good word, eroding consistently, and that can be environmental, it can be internal, it can be lots of different factors, and that's what burnout is, right? You can have a bad week, and it's a bad week, but burnout will only get worse if you don't deal with it, and it will get to the point where it got to me that you physically and mentally you're a wreck and you cannot perform in any way.
Did that come across as a panic attack, first of all, or
Nah,
was it physical?
I've never had a panic attack in my life.
Yeah.
Never had a panic attack in my life. I didn't have that whole anxiety piece. I really had the physical symptoms initially, before I had the mental symptoms.
So you thought something was maybe physically up with you?
Yeah, I was at the doctor all the time. Yeah, I had lots of, I was tested for a lot, nearly MRIs, tested for everything. I had stomach issues, I had back issues, I had muscle issues, I lost half the muscle in my body. I had so many sleep issues, I had so many issues. So many. And it was only when, a specialist at Ross Hall Hospital in Glasgow said to me, "You're a week away from a mental breakdown." And even then I didn't listen. I got on a plane and I didn't realise. I didn't listen to him. But it was a physical, and then the mental kicked in for me. So I suppose a lot of people have the mental first. They'll have the anxiety. I didn't have that, but I did have shaking. My hand always shake. My hands always shaked. Even in my 20s, before a big meeting, it would shake. And I always thought it was adrenaline. That's my strength. But it wasn't. It was my body dealing with stress, and then that stress just got it's like you get older. Your family stress, a lot of things go on at work, outside of work, and then boom, 33. I'm like, I had a 3-year-old that I barely seen. I had provided house, cars, school, all that kind of stuff, but I was a wreck, and then I had to just rethink everything. But yeah, no. And burnout, again, it hit me. You can't get to the last stage of burnout is just full shutdown, and that happened to me. And it happened to me in a plane, and I just started tears coming down my eyes, and or down my face, and I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's not I didn't want to do life anymore. I just didn't want to do anything that I was doing. I just felt, I just had nothing. I had no energy. I had no passion. I had no confidence. I just felt like a wreck, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And then I said I went on a long journey after that, and that's why I never then jumped from that to a startup. There was no way I could have done it. I would have failed within a day. There was no way I could have done it. I had to build that. I had to build the coping mechanisms, the techniques. I had to learn, what stressed me out. Ironically, the biggest thing for me is not being able to provide, financially. That's one of my biggest stressors. Then going into a startup, you're facing that head on every day, personally and professionally. So I had to really learn how to deal with it. Every day I'm having to deal with that. But but being able to lean into that, something kind of liberating about leaning into the thing that causes you the most stress every day, and being able to then deal with it. But the reason I'm so vocal about it, and I said I get a little bit of backlash on it sometimes, but
Do you?
yeah, I do.
In what way? Because surely it's only a positive thing.
Nah, not everybody sees it as a positive. But I think showing that vulnerability and sharing that I've had that, and I try and create a positive, right? I'm not sharing all woes me. Look at me. As I said, I went through it and I've done a lot of things that helped do it, and so I share those things. But like, there is still a stigma on mental health. There's no question
100%.
about it. There's still a stigma, and I know that I know it's not always seen as a positive, but I'm going to keep talking about it and I'm going to keep sharing it. And
So what's the negative stuff you get? Are people saying that it's victim mentality, or it doesn't exist, or you shouldn't be sharing, or?
yeah, I think it's more about the sharing. And as I said, it's not a lot of people, but there
Bizarre,
is.
that absolutely bizarre.
But there is some. But that's okay.
Yeah,
I think
not take the good with the bad.
I think that's okay. As I said, the biggest thing for me is that I have a lot of leaders reach out to me. A lot of people reach out to me about it. I'm not an expert. And I will never become an expert. But
You've got lived
I
experience.
can share it. I can share what worked for me.
So what do you do in terms of burnout? Is normally caused by having too many burdens to carry across a multiple of different things. And I think burnout also comes from losing a sense of self. I think that's a big robbery that happens when you lose that sense of self. But very often that burnout is caused by trying to achieve a goal that you think you can't stop. So you've got the school bills, you've got the big house, you've got the fancy cars, you've got the holidays. You might have 50 staff that are dependent on you paying their mortgages.
Yeah.
So very often the mentality is, I can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next?
So, look, I think, and there's loads of people that have got that life and that don't have burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think burnout is from my experience and from my situation, I had my priorities all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That was where burnout was for me. So my number one priority was my career and developing my career. And I had the view that by doing that, I was then providing for my family and I was being a good dad and a good husband and a good whatever by being a great provider. The reality was that was very, very naive, because my health, I didn't look at that. I didn't really prioritise quality time. I've got a great relationship with my daughter now, but in the first 3 years, I was not there, right? My wife was on her own doing it. I was never there. And when I was there, I mentally wasn't there. So I've spent a lot of time trying to make up for that, because I felt a lot of guilt now about it. I didn't feel any guilt at the time because I was trying to provide. But then I realised you got to be selfish. The first thing you got to be selfish about is your own health, right? If you're not selfish around that, you don't focus on that, then everything else kind of doesn't really matter, right? Your career can't be anywhere if you're sat in a hospital bed with burnout. Or worse, what I was trying to do, I was trying to ride it out, right? I knew I wasn't great. I was just keeping going and trying to, and I was making bad decisions. I was a bad leader, I pride myself on being a really good leader. I was a bad leader. I made bad decisions that impacted people. I acted in a way that wasn't great. And I made a lot of decisions that had a lot of impact. And I had to kind of own that and be okay with that. And then build it.
So
build it back up.
What did recovery look like then? So you say a lot of people reach out to you for what steps?
So for me, I think with most people, when they get to that point, they get signed off for 2 or 3 weeks. That's what happened with me. But I realised pretty quickly I needed to change everything. Everything. I had to quit my job, which I didn't want to do. I thought I'd be there forever. Most people were. I thought I'd be there forever. I'd be there, I had no plans to leave. And that was a big wrench because I'd kind of grown up there as a 21-year-old. But I had to just change I had to change everything. So I left, I was like, what's kind of the hardest thing I could do? And I started MMA. I started a thing called Whip to Warrior. I still hate that name, but I started that, and that was a 6-month program of, you know, it's a lot. It wasn't a mental health thing, but most of the guys, ours was all men. The other ones were more diverse, but our one wasn't diverse at all. It was just a bunch of guys who had all had mental health issues. But like, it wasn't a mental health thing. It wasn't like meant to be that.
You just ended up there.
That's the way it was. So it was different places, and we trained every morning at 6 o'clock in the grip house with Dean Riley, who became one of my best friends, and you know, we put ourselves outside our comfort zone, right? We got our ego kicked out of us. We learned discipline. I had a big ego at the time, and you know, that was choked out of me, right? All of that went, and so that was one. Purpose was one, right? Finding my ikigai, traveling, speaking to a lot of experts, you know, around learning how to meditate properly. You know, all these things you hear that you think, aye, but you know, for me, they actually work. Meditation worked for me. Ice baths worked for me. Spending more time outside worked for me. Training consistently. I thought I would exercise a lot, but I didn't. I would train for like 2 days, 3 days, and I wouldn't train for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Got to be consistent. And putting myself outside my comfort zone. I don't, you know, I don't. I do the meditation and a lot of the other things every day. I don't train. I probably train 4 or 5 times a week, but I don't train every day. Just try and have rest. I don't do the ice baths every day. I don't do everything every day, but I have different things that I use at different. When I'm under huge stress, you'll be able to tell because I'm doing ice baths consistently, because I find that to be my kind of break glass in case of emergency. I don't do it every day.
So do you have one of those things in the garden?
No, I do, but I've been going recently. There's a place in Bathgate I actually go to, and they've got called Float, and I've been going there recently just because they've got a sauna, they've got a proper like ice bath. It's like a proper, it's like a 10 grand ice bath. I don't have one of them in the house, but they've got. But I do have the kind of outside one, but I use that mostly. And also go, this guy Jim, he's got a wellness centre in Lanark, and he's got, he was the one who kind of trained me, even when I was back in a leadership group. I went to see him initially when I was doing really bad, and he helped me a lot and with the techniques. So I just kind of went and spoke to people and tried different things, and some things worked for me and some things didn't, and just trial and errored a lot of things. And then the way I'd never really. I'd been on LinkedIn since 2007, but I'd never actually really posted much on LinkedIn. And I wrote a small blog article. It's not even a blog. It was just a Word document. And I can't even remember what it's called. It's like Mental Health of a Grumpy Scotsman or something like that I called it. And I wrote it and I just uploaded it. And the response I got was huge. And I don't even know why I'd uploaded it, because I'd never actually posted much. And then kind of from there, it built. And as I said, I'm not, you know, I've no interest to be a mental health expert, but I do think there's value in sharing your story. And
how do you protect against that in your workplace just now for others?
So,
because as a leader, you need to push.
You got it, and as a startup, so we the big thing for us is we focus on flexible working and autonomy. We used to do a lot of things like mental health days and a lot of these things, but really what we doubled down on was flexible working and autonomy. We've trained some of the guys in mental health first aid, so we spot signs, but the big thing for us was that people didn't want to be in office every day, so let's not make them. They want to be treated like adults, so they've got an OKR, so they've got their business results need to hit every 3 months, but we're not clocking in when they're working. We're treating them like adults. We're giving them private healthcare, because you get mental health and healthcare as part of that. And we just keep, we keep an eye out on it. But yeah, it's nothing groundbreaking, right? It is really I would say the flexibility and autonomy is there's no micromanaging, there's clear goals, there's clear accountability, but we're treating people like adults, and we're letting them do their thing, and we're also showing them what their career development is, what we're trying to do. We're very clear about what we're trying to achieve as a company, so that helps. As I said, we've had the guys come and do ice baths. We've trained them in meditation. We've done the kind of wellness days, but I think we're not doing those things as much now, because I didn't, they were good initially, but I think now it's just about making sure we do the fundamentals right, and we create a work environment where people can achieve and be honest, and not everyone works out, but we're honest with them, and we treat everybody as well as we can. Yeah.
Burnout in individuals, they need to want to stop and accept it. So I guess if you think someone in your life's got heading in a certain direction, saying you're going to burn yourself out is probably a waste of time, isn't it?
I don't know. I think the more you hear it, the better, right? I think for me, I was definitely told by mental health professionals, I was told, but I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told, so when I got to that point, I kind of knew what it was at least, right? Because I didn't know what burnout was. I'd heard of burnout, I'm a bit burnt out, but I didn't realise that burnout was a real thing, and that actually it was a medical thing, and it was important. I didn't realise any of that. Like when I worked at Leaders Group, we had brought in like meditation guys. At one point, I laughed at it. I said, "I ain't doing this, right?" Me and none of my team are doing this. Like I was really against a lot of this, especially in the workplace, right? So I'm not, I'm very clear, right? I'm not an evangelist, right? I used to be a very, very aggressive, arrogant at times person that was focused on building at any cost.
Yeah.
And that, and as I said, that did become a bit of a zero-sum game, right? Yeah. And so I think just being aware of that, and and giving people just different ideas. Like I said, if you'd said to me 10 years ago that I would be speaking about meditation and then burnout and ice baths, I would have laughed at you. There's no danger I would be doing that. And it would be no danger. I wouldn't think I'd be in corporate life, because I always thought I'd be in corporate life. By that point, I never thought I'd leave it, as long as I got to do the entrepreneurial bit and I got to kind of build things. But yeah, I think it doesn't do any harm just to give people, and then and pass them to certain people that have been there and speak to them. But yeah, it's very hard to impact somebody who's in that place. I said nobody could have got through to me. I had to go there. I think it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me.
So I guess if someone's sitting listening just now and they're really struggling, and I guess we need to leave them with a bit of practical help. Is it call one of those the mental health charities? We can leave links, I guess, in the.
Yeah, look, I think it depends where you're at, right? I think there's obviously huge stages of different, there's burnout, and then there is depression, there's anxiety, there's lots of different things, right? I think first of all, if you are feeling negative, you're feeling demotivated, I think first thing, write it down. Share it with a friend or a colleague, and start the process of talking about it. If you are at the stage where you are feeling hugely depressed or God forbid suicidal, then yes, absolutely speak to the Samaritan, speak to whatever mental health healthcare you've got through your work, or even through a GP. Absolutely, if you're at that stage. But if you're working in a company and you're feeling negative, demotivated, start writing it down. Start focusing on prioritising a little bit of health, right? So if you're gripping the bat too tight, go a walk. No headphones, no phone, just go a walk. Listen to the trees, listen to the wind in the trees, listen to the birds. Just go out and just do something, walk, get out of it for a bit. Try and do some consistent exercise, try and sleep, try and eat. Try and take a few days off the booze. There are just nice practical things you can do to help. But as I said, if you're full on at the other side, that's when you need to go and get help. Absolutely.
Get help. So what's next for Gigged?
So for us, it's about continuing to add value to our customers, grow our customer base, both on the talent side and the client side. Continue to grow that. We're going to start doing more business in the US later on this year, so that's going to be big for us. Our plan always was grow our customer base here and then start to, because the US market in here works quite well. And I've got a sneaking suspicion, it's only a suspicion, that a lot of the talent in the UK can add a lot of value to startups in the US. There's a lot of investment in the US. Now, not to get too political, but a thing called IR35, which has really hurt high-paying contractors in the UK. I think there's a big opportunity for them in the US, and we're going to try and bring, if you're a company in New York and you're trying to build a data product or an AI product, it's really hard to get talent in the US. There's amazing people here. Time difference isn't huge. Contractually, it's easy to do. So we're going to try and lean into that. And we're going to really lean into building this bring your own agent infrastructure layer into both platforms. That's a big product that we're leaning into now, which our vision is then to become the blended workforce platform for enterprise CIOs. That's what we want to be. So enterprise CIO can use our platform to be able to create a task and then tap into either an internal employee, external resource, or an AI agent all in one platform. We're not there yet. It's going to take time and money, but that is the vision, and that's what we're going to focus on building. We might not achieve that vision, but that's the vision.
Superb. Well, thanks very much for coming in, my friend.
No, thank you.
Really enjoyed it. I actually learned quite a bit today, so thank you very much for coming
no problem.
in. And
I
look forward to seeing what Gig does.
Thank you.
Nice.
Appreciate it.